From the Middle is a founding member of Odd Pods Media. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to episode number 230 of From the Middle. We are three middle-class guys living in the middle of America in the middle chapters of our lives with a point of view somewhere in the middle. And in this episode, we invite a fourth guy from the middle who does all the middle things that we like to do, except he also owns a super awesome pizza shop. In this episode, we talk a lot about his journey from white collar to pizza owner. We talk a little bit about movies and scenes in movies that make us real hungry, and some of the things he does in his free time on the back half. Make sure to check out the episode. We have a great time. Hit that music.
Oh, for the love. Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it? You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved.
From the Middle after dark over here. I am so excited. We have Brent Gargas on the podcast today, which, Brent, I'm so glad to have you on. We've been talking about pizza forever on this podcast. Several guests really honing in talking about pizza, and you're one of those. We've been talking about you the last couple weeks that we were going to have you on. Thank you for joining and taking some time. I know you've not been feeling well, so thank you for joining and hanging out with us to chat a little bit.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. I feel terrible. It's taken this long for us to get together. That is totally my fault. And I'm just pumped to be here and talk to you guys.
That's awesome. Well, people are going to find out why you've been so busy other than being sick. For a little bit of background, how we met. We're kind of in the same general area outside of Columbus. And actually, my wife saw a post that you put on social media about at the time you had a pizza like truck, right? You guys wanted stickers to put on your truck that you were driving around. And my wife was like, hey, you guys have the podcast stickers. Why don't you see they want stuff that could be a fun thing to throw on there. It would be something different. Otherwise, they're going to just probably get a lot of the same type of stickers. And so we connected, and I think we ordered some food that was amazing and got you some stickers. And that's how we met. Like, my wife connected us through social media. Does that sound right? Did I butcher that?
No, that's 100% right. And honestly, I remember you were one of the first stickers that we got, because that was when we had just built out our second food truck. We moved from one size to another, and we had this like wall inside, and we just figured we could get some cool stickers on there. And honestly, I thought the same thing whenever I got a podcast sticker that wasn't pizza related. I'm like, this is perfect, because otherwise it just looks like a wall of like, a pizza shrine or something to people that maybe I had never really met.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about this. You now have a storefront, and you were very kind. And I was like, hey, you have a store in case you needed another sticker. Here it is. You were very kind to have had it on your POS system, like right at the front when people walked in for a long time. So thanks for that. I'm sure you helped us get a few extra downloads week over week.
Hey, actually, I need some more, because we switched our POS systems. So we have different cash registers now. So give me 2 more of those and I get one on each register for sure.
Well, since you asked, I'll be over tomorrow.
They're coming.
All right. Yeah, I dig it.
That's all.
We've got plenty. And while we're not mentioning your wall of overtly pizza podcast, while we're not exclusively a pizza podcast, we end up talking about pizza for most of our episodes.
We've talked about your pizza more than once over the years.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
So what's interesting, and I want to hear a little bit about that journey, because I know you haven't been making pizzas your whole life. You've changed your styles of pizza as well. And I don't know if we've talked about it personally. I'm not normally, I am not a Columbus thin crust pizza guy. We've talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast. And I also don't normally like thick pizzas. And you shifted your pizzas a little bit on me. You kind of got me hooked, and then you changed the recipe, but I'm still a big fan. So take people back well before the sticker call out on social media. That's where we got introduced, but there's certainly more to the story than that. So take people back, do the rewind in the movie that like all of a sudden it's like 1987, on the screen, and we're talking to Brent now. So what was going on?
Yeah, I got it. I wish we could do like a music montage of me like pressing dough out like Rocky, like out in the snow or something. But it really wasn't that like heroic, maybe is the word. But no, I just got really, so I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and everything where I grew up was a similar style pizza to what we make now, which is square pizza. It was thicker, like it was a thicker crust back home. But so that's what we were used to. And we moved here 8 years ago, and everything is Columbus style pizza, thin crust pizza with provolone cheese. That's Columbus style pizza. And it's not that we don't like it. It was just different than what we were used to. So then I just started tinkering around at home making it. And the desire to do it commercially really came from probably the lack of interest that I had in my current job anymore. That probably pushed me more to thinking that I could do this. And then I made a few friends that had food trucks at the time that were doing wood-fired pizza. So I went and met them, saw their setups, and realized why wood-fired pizza works in a food truck, because you can do decent volume. And that was really what drew me to wood-fired pizzas, that, I cooked them a little slower, but it was like a 2.5 minute bake, which is still pretty fast. By the time you get it in the oven and out the door, it's 5 minutes, and that's a quick turnaround, and that's what you need in a food truck. But I started making it at home, and then I built this little crappy wood fire oven in my driveway, and I'm not a mason, so it only lasted like a year and it fell apart because at the time I didn't know how to cure an oven. So I made this thing. It looked great, and then I cured it, and I thought I did it right, but you definitely can't cure an oven really fast. I did it super fast, so it cracked and fell apart eventually. But so I started just doing that. Got the first trailer, had no idea what I was doing, because I'm a registered nurse. My wife's a registered nurse. And, I just went into this thinking, it'll be fun. What could possibly go wrong? And, everything goes wrong initially. So we kind of just started without an idea of what we wanted this to be. As silly as that sounds, I never in my wildest dreams anticipated it turning into a storefront. Initially, it was going to be something we did on the side for fun. I was in a very corporate nursing job at the time. The company I worked for drastically changed my position, gave me a ton of new responsibility, and wouldn't give me any more money. So I just said, you know what, I'm out, put my notice in. And I figured if, the food truck didn't work, then I just go be a nurse anywhere else. And, kind of here we are now at this point.
Yeah. So what was the name of the food truck at the time? Because you had a different name.
Yeah, so we called it Farm Fired Pizzas because nobody ever understood the name, and I didn't make it for anybody to understand. And it was really because we started doing it. We own a little farm. We live out in the middle of nowhere. We have a decent chunk of land, and we don't have big cattle or anything, but we have chickens and stuff like that. So I started learning how to do it on the farm, and it was wood fired. So we kind of just put it together.
Yeah. And I didn't say this in the intro because I wanted this to sort of be a glorious name drop now. And now you have a building. Now you have a storefront where people can come order and pick it up. And now it's Pizza Nerds. Yes. I love it. And the decor certainly matches. So I'm gonna get to that. But let me jump back for a second, because nursing to a food truck certainly feels like you had to have liked food or loved food. Some of our past episodes, if you like hearing about food, episode 84, we talk cakes, 91 pizza, 94 all kinds of foods, 179 barbecue, among others. So we've talked about a lot of different stuff. We love talking about food in here. Were you into food? Was that a thing that you had always been like, oh, I'm the guy who always did this during the holidays, or I was always dreamed about having the huge stone pizza oven thing in the backyard by the pool? Was that a thing, or how did you pivot? If not, how did you pivot to that? Why a food truck?
Well, it was always pizza. I was always into pizza since I remember when I was little that I didn't like pizza. I don't know, there was something wrong with me. But I remember the first time I ate pizza that I liked it. Like, it was a memorable experience for me. It was Pizza Joe's Pizza. I was at my friend Derek's house, and it was a sausage pizza. And I was little, and I remember that. And it's just always been something I've really loved. I know everybody loves pizza, so that's not really saying anything out of this world. But I always loved pizza. I mean, to the point that I used to call my mom. It's still a joke. I'd call her at work every day to ask if she could bring pizza home, to the point that the secretary at her dialysis clinic she worked at would just tell me no. She wouldn't even ask my mom. She'd be like, no, Brent, she's not bringing pizza home. That was like a routine part of my life. So getting into it commercially was just because I started making something that I thought was pretty good. And, I made a few friends that encouraged me that, it could be a good way to go and make some extra at the time, just make extra money on the side. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah.
I'm always very interested in it. These guys will probably roll their eyes in like that crossroads moment of your life when sure that they had changed the role on you and sort of gave you a strong motivation to leave. But a lot of people have ideas for things or a desire to try things. I just went camping with two very dear friends, and both of them very much hate their corporate jobs and one of them dreams of like opening a mini golf like adventure park place, and another one doesn't know what he wants to do. He just knows he hates what he does. But we all get stuck, and I'm not trying to get too philosophical, but like, how were you able to break free? What's different about you that you thought, well, what the heck, let's just try this, as opposed to just grabbing the next nursing job or just going to the next hospital system? Like, if you were, in retrospect, to be able to point to, maybe it was those encouraging friends or being dumb enough to think it might work or whatever, like, what would you attribute that to? How can my friends break free from the jobs that they hate?
I mean, I think you have to start looking at it in a very logical way. You have to set up your life in a way that you have some runway to make a mistake if it doesn't work. You can't just, if you're in debt over your eyeballs and you're drowning, it's really difficult to be able to get out of something that's paying your bills. But if you can save up some money and give yourself a little bit of a runway, that whatever you're starting, and you have to know that whatever you're starting is not going to be, quote unquote, successful right off the bat. And if it is, God bless you, because you are very lucky. It's very much a grind to get something. I mean, we're still at the pizza shop now, still grinding away. We still have slow days and slow weeks. But you have to get yourself a runway to start it. And then you have to have almost like a stupid false sense of confidence in yourself that you can't fail.
Yeah.
And that false, call it being naive. I don't know. Being naive, I've said it before, being naive is a superpower when it comes to getting into something you're uncomfortable with. Because if you knew how hard it was, you'd be scared to do it. So you just have to get into it. And, just make peace with the fact that there's going to be times it's going to suck. There's going to be times where you're going to be stressed. But in the long run, working for yourself, I found to be far more rewarding than almost every nursing job really I ever had, other than probably when I was an ICU nurse. That was probably the most rewarding job I ever had. But working for myself is a different type of rewarding.
Is that a mindset you think you had before, like that sort of just leap of faith, give yourself some runway, like I could try this? Or would you say that's something you learned having done it?
I think there's like a couple parts. That one is I also really hated my job, and I did for years. And then when they changed it, so I was running an education department for a very large dialysis company. And it just got to the point where like I was mad about my job every hour I was awake, whether I was at work or not at work. So I knew I had to do something for my own, mental health. But the feeling of like that false sense of confidence or whatever it was, I don't know if that was something I had or if it was just something I needed to have to be able to get myself to get away from something that was making me unhappy. It's hard to look back at that.
Yeah.
I think that I think the how uncomfortable you were in your work position helped you a lot, actually. Because if people kind of like their job and then they're balancing the pros and cons of Like, well, this thing isn't that bad. Like, it's fine.
It
And I have
changes the
health
risk reward.
insurance
Yeah.
and I have whatever. But like if you disliked it that much, it sounds like you were either consciously or subconsciously like looking for a way out of that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would 100%. I always wanted to do my own thing. And whenever I was younger, I didn't know that it was going to be pizza. Actually, I wanted to open an archery shop when I was little for a long time. And, after a while, I kind of realized that probably wasn't going to work. The internet kind of killed that dream for me in that sense. But I knew I wanted to do something. The job really pushed me to make a decision. I could have found another nursing job and probably been fine with it. I mean, I never disliked taking care of people. I disliked the corporate side of it. But
yeah,
it definitely drove me to try harder. I mean, I was listening to podcasts about, how to like deal with the stress of starting a business. Like I was in for probably a year and a half before I finally pulled the trigger of doing it.
Spin on the archery idea. There's so many axe throwing places. If you can aim some bows at the axe throwers, it could be like a new kind of medieval times, but like on a smaller scale. So
yeah, there's two more opening.
Maybe
Oh,
consider that as a spin on the archery thing.
What this reminds me of, Brent, do you have kids?
I do not have kids, which also helps.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm going to maybe parallel to try to understand, like this confidence mindset that you're talking about, is when people have kids, new parents, and wife is pregnant, and you're looking forward. I feel like there's a couple different types of people in that situation, and one of them, possibly the most popular one, is the one who's freaked out because they don't know if they have what it takes to keep a kid alive, right? Much less raise them in a thoughtful way that they don't turn into serial killers. Like every parent's secret fear, they'll sit there on the couch and watch their like 7-year-old do things, and you're thinking to yourself, am I looking at like early serial killer signs right now? Like we're all of us are legitimately worried about that for our children. But then there's people who don't seem to be bothered, and I feel like I was not relatively bothered, but the reason for that was because like I had people in my life who were telling me things like, listen, it's not like the baby comes out of the womb and then they're 18 years old and then like it's an automatic, just like you're on trial to see what your 18-year-old is now. Like that's not the way it works. It's they're born, and then you figure out what to do for the next hour, and then you figure out what to do like come that first night, and then the next morning you wake up and you're in the hospital, and then you learn those steps as you go. Like you just stay one step ahead of it. And like you have the wherewithal to handle that. So don't think about the next 18 years. Think about the next important success that you need to have, and worry about that thing. I don't know. Would you say that sounds something similar to that confidence? Maybe where that confidence might be able to be mustered inside of somebody?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, well, it's two things. One, if you can have a child and have the confidence to have a child, starting a business should not be that difficult in terms of like the scary things in your life. And two, there was what you said about the next step. There was, I can't remember what podcast it was at the time I listened to. It's been years, but it stuck with me in the sense of a guy said he didn't know how to sell a car. He's like, I had a car, I had to sell a car. I didn't know how to sell a car, but I knew I had to wash the car to sell it. So I washed it. And then I figured I had to take some pictures of it. So I took some pictures of it. And it's the same thing. You're just taking steps, and you're going to run into problems with those, but then you figure out the next step too. But yeah, you're 100% right. You don't look that far down the road. You're just looking at your toes in front, look your next foot. It definitely can be overwhelming if you looked at the big picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Did you both just what about Bob this whole situation? Just like baby steps to the elevator, baby steps down the hallway, baby steps to the front door. Is that so to own a successful business? Just what about Bob the whole situation?
I think so.
I wonder what our demographic is like and how many people have actually seen that film.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I also want to point out too, because there's probably somebody thinking of it out there. So you guys are totally anti pet parent terminology. But here we are equating our jobs to our kids. And yeah,
Yeah.
pets just went down one notch. That's what just happened.
All right. So speaking of What About Bob and old references, Pizza Nerds is blown up. You guys are doing an incredible job on the scene. Your wife is helping you. She has these like incredible, like loaded cookie treats every day. There's like new awesome kinds of cookies. You've got this super cool like 90s theme. I don't know if it's 80s, 90s. Feel free to correct me there.
It's in there anywhere.
Somewhere in there. So give me a little bit of the sense of like making pizza is one thing, naming pizzas, which rattle off a couple of those, naming pizzas, designing the shop, doing the cookie thing. You didn't just say, here's a pizza with pepperoni, here's a garden salad, and here's a breadstick with Parmesan cheese. Enjoy. So let's talk a little bit about what makes you guys very unique, because all of that is stuff that stands out for people that aren't familiar with you.
Well, I mean, it was all part of what so you pulled up some images here and stuff, but there's a million pizza shops around here. And people always would ask me, how can you open a pizza shop? There's so much competition. Well, honestly, I wasn't worried about the competition because pizza sells pizza. If there's a pizza shop literally you could walk to from where my shop's at, I bet we've got customers from them, and I bet they've got customers from us who didn't know each one existed. So,
sure.
But we knew we had to be different in the sense that I didn't just want to be, another pizza shop that sells pepperoni pizza. We wanted to do something that was unique, something that people would remember outside of just the food. As much of an experience as you can have in a takeout pizzeria is kind of what we wanted. We don't have any indoor dining. It's just a very small space with a bunch now of 90s, 80s things. And that all kind of just grew. My wife and I were sitting talking about what we wanted to name it, and we decided we were going to go with Pizza Nerds because we used to call people that in our posts, like, "Hey, Pizza Nerds." And we are also very nerdy about the things that we do in the business. I can go down a tangent about, making pizza dough and all things pizza. Like, I love that stuff. I can nerd out on that like crazy. And she's the same way about cookies. And then we fell in love with pizza in the 80s and the 90s. So we wanted it to be like every day we went to work, we're making pizza. It was like, it felt like we were doing it back when we were kids. So we wanted to kind of surround ourselves with all those things. And a lot of people have kind of really dug it, which is fun for us. The people that come in there and take their pictures with, Hulk and Macho Man in the corner and just freak out about all the stuff that's in there. It's really enjoyable. People bring us stuff. The amount of toys we have now from customers bringing us stuff is insane.
That's awesome. I know there's something about all the references. It's easy. Not that I'm in there waiting long because you guys are so on it, but there's something nice about being in there and looking at all the references. It's like going back and watching Home Alone and just realizing life was simpler then,
Uh-huh.
It's like you could get on a plane and walk with people right up to, where they would walk out and get on. And so it's nice being in there, just looking around, because it's all the nostalgia that you love. And, I think if you weren't on YouTube to be able to see some of the photos, look up Pizza Nerds and check out their Facebook page, follow, do all that stuff, and look at some of the photos, because it's stuff like, wrestling references and movie and TV. There's some Seinfeld stuff. There's more than I can even rattle off.
Rugrats.
And then a bunch of Rugrats and a bunch of toys, little collectibles and knickknacks and things that make it so fun. So I think you guys have leaned into that really well in the cookie thing. And what are some of the more popular pizza names? And they're not just the standard pepperoni and cheese.
So like probably the most popular pizza we sell is called the Mario, and it's pepperoni, banana peppers, and hot honey with a red sauce. That's probably our most popular. And then shortly after that, we have the Doug, and that's our chicken bacon ranch. And the Big Daddy has actually gotten very, very popular, and that's our barbecue chicken pizza. We do our own ranch. We put ranch on that, and then also these crispy jalapenos go on it at the end as well. That's become very popular. And I mean, we have the Donkey Kong. We have the Kenny Rogers. I don't think a lot of people understand where we got the name the Kenny Rogers from. That's actually a Seinfeld reference from Kenny Rogers Chicken, about how Kramer's living across from the Kenny Rogers chicken place, and he's, that chicken's gonna mess you up. He's yelling out the window. That's where that one came from.
I love it. Whatever one is the cheeseburger one you had.
The Donkey Kong.
You had me at like instant fan when I'm like, this is like cheeseburger and pizza all in one bite, and I love every minute of it. That's awesome. Well, you guys are totally crushing that, and shout out to your wife. I couldn't even begin to rattle off some of the different combinations of cookies and things that I've seen her come up with. And I don't know if you are in on that too. But if you like cookies with awesome toppings and or icing on the inside, you're in for a real treat because they're delicious. Do you have a favorite or any favorites among all the cookies?
Oh man, that's tough. I can narrow it down to 3 that, like, if they're up there, those are the ones that I take. So my favorite one is probably the basic sugar cookie with buttercream. That's probably my favorite. I know that's like, annoyingly simple, but after that, it would be the cookies and cream, the one that's stuffed with cookies and cream. And then the raspberry filled white chocolate chip. Those 3 are probably my favorite. Oh wait, no, crap. There's 2 other ones.
Go for it.
Yep. So she makes a cinnamon crunch one. It's a cinnamon cookie with a cinnamon buttercream that has almost like what's the name of that? Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal crushed up on top of it. That one is super good. And then they just started doing a carrot cake cookie, which is literally like eating a piece of carrot cake with a cream cheese icing on top. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's 5.
Yeah, and these are always soft throughout. And my biggest issue with thicker pizza that you described initially, kind of square, I wouldn't call it a Detroit style. I don't know what it's called kind of officially. Maybe it is. Normally when I get that, it's like very dense and it's chewy, and your guys' pizza isn't like that at all. It's very soft all the way through. And it's delicious. So now we're officially ready for 4th meal. So this seems like a great time to take a minute, take a break, hear from one of our friends in Odd Pods Media, and we'll be right back with Brent of Pizza Nerds.
Hey, I'm Pantsless Aaron.
This is Stevie.
And I'm Augie.
And we are BFYTW, a podcast all about playing games and having fun. Our games are usually based on British panel shows and game shows, but we'll play anything that captures our attention and imagination. Why? It's right there in the title.
You'll never guess what the F stands for.
So we were talking during the break there, and Dylan had mentioned ranch and how he was it Jets Ranch that you liked?
Yeah, Jets. Shout out to a national chain who needs it.
But your point was you liked their ranch, and then Pizza Nerds is making their own and blowing Jets out of the water, which they're doing, as we talked about with like the Detroit style pizza thing. Again, haven't heard official word yet from Brent as to whether or not we can call him. There's that, but I want to just put a positive note out there that Jets, it should not be what's in your mind as what Detroit style pizza is. So I'm just going to put that out there. But I have an inside question that I've been begging to get answered and just never had the right person to ask, and maybe you are it. There are kind of like a few places where people are like fans of their ranch, and I know that you guys make your own. How common is it that places are making their own ranch? Is that like a normal thing? Are like typical restaurants making their own ranch? Like,
no,
you have any insight?
I mean, so I have some insight on some things, and I have a lot of friends that I've made, thankfully, in the restaurant industry. The ones that are very, very, very good make their own stuff. A lot of restaurants are just getting in prepackaged, pre-made food that they're just frying for you. That's a huge thing. Or pre-made dressings, pre-made sauces, and they're just putting them into cups. That's what a lot of places do. I would never say which ones do it and which ones don't, but it's more common than I ever knew until I got into this world. how many places are just buying things. Because I have distributors coming to me all the time trying to sell me this stuff, because we'll talk about the pizzas we're going to be making for specialties and the different sauces. Like, oh, we already have that. I'm like, no, if I can't make it, I don't want to sell it. And it's amazing how common that is.
That's interesting. I worked in college at one of the on-campus cafeterias, and I can tell you there we cut like the big plastic jar of ranch and dumped it into a big bucket and cut it with buttermilk.
Yeah, that's a lot of places do that, or they'll
we
add
did
some
that
sour
there.
cream to it, buttercream or buttermilk. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
some
so we
places
could
don't even
say
do
It
that.
was a blend, but I mean, technically it was a blend. Technically, we were putting our own little thing together.
Yeah,
It wasn't legit.
yeah. There's a lot of it, and I get it. A lot of it's time consuming. Like from my staffing standpoint, I pay more for my employees to be there before we're open in terms of the number of people that have to work in hours than I do when we're actually open. It takes more to get ready to be open than it does to actually function and be open.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
Since we're talking toppings, when did you first notice the hot honey craze? And I'm so glad you jumped on the bandwagon, because that is delicious. But that's relatively new, no?
Yeah, I'd say we did it on our food truck back when we first opened, so in 2020.
Okay.
I probably first heard about it the year prior to that. So the guy that was doing it was pretty small then. It was called Mike's Hot Honey.
Yep.
And he was relatively small at the time out of New York. And he's now blown up into like this giant business. I'm very thankful that he exists, because I really enjoy his product. But yeah, probably 2019-ish is when I noticed it.
That's awesome. All right. So I thought that we could come out of the break and play a little. It's not really a game. It's just a fun little icebreaker. So we talked a little bit about the mashup of pop culture in food that you display in your sort of brand and your look and feel. So I thought it'd be fun to go around and say some of our favorite scenes in television and movies that make us hungry. So it's probably something that you watch regularly. And here's an important qualifier. The food item doesn't have to look appetizing to you, but maybe the sound effects or the look of satisfaction in the character's face enjoying it makes you hungry. So scenes from TVs and movies that make you hungry. Anybody can go. I imagine that we'll have some of the same. We've not seen each other's lists, but I thought this could be really fun. Who wants to start?
I can start with an actual pizza one.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're watching a Goofy movie, they're enjoying pizza in the hotel room, and as they like pull the slice, the cheese like stretches, and it looks incredible. It looks so good, and it makes me want pizza every freaking time.
I feel like maybe we all should just get our pizza ones out of the way, because I'm sure we all have them. I've got two that are associated with pizza. The first one is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, never pay for late pizza.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. That was exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, watching them like obsess over pizza and then just like gnaw down on this like neon yellow pizza. Like, for whatever reason, as a kid, got me really wanting pizza. And
in the cartoon, when they would pull it from the box,
it stretches.
It'd be super stretchy and drippy.
Yeah. The second pizza one that I have is Home Alone. Just the way that he talks about in my very own lovely cheese pizza, and when he gets it, and then the other scene where he's like getting out to the limo toward the end of the film, I think, and one is presented to him, and it's presented to him as your own cheese pizza. And that's just the idea of like, man, to be alone with a cheese pizza.
Yeah.
Even earlier in the movie, when the family's still there and they're all just shoving it in their faces, and Fuller's drinking the Pepsi, like the way that Buzz is scarfing down that pizza, watching him do it is unappetizing, but seeing how much he enjoys it makes me want it.
Also, since you mentioned Home Alone, that bowl of mac and cheese on the white tablecloth always looked pretty dope. Like, what kind of fancy mac and cheese Is that like the fanciest shells and cheddar that's ever existed that's in that bowl? Because it looks great.
Let's not forget his ice cream that he fixes himself to watch the movie. So like I had 3 from Home Alone: pizza, the mac and cheese, and the ice cream.
I could go
Okay.
with I got a couple, I guess. So obviously I was with you guys on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pizza scene where the Domino's guy stuffs it down the sewer grate.
Yep.
I'd say the 2 other ones. One is Groundhog Day, when he's eating dinner and he has all that food on the table. He's eating cake for dinner, and it's just like this gluttonous meal of every delicious food you can imagine. He's just housing it all. For some reason, that sticks with me as like I definitely probably I don't eat as good as I used to, so that looks phenomenal to sit down at a meal like that. And then the other one would be: have you ever seen the movie Chef with Jon Favreau? So that scene when he's making the grilled cheese for his kid, that grilled cheese looks so good, and I would love to eat that grilled cheese.
That's so funny. I had chef on my list, but I had forgotten about the grilled cheese. So I was just thinking like any of the Cubanos.
Yeah, absolutely. Any of those. Yeah.
Any of the Cubanos look freaking awesome when they're cooking those on Chef. That's awesome.
That's fun. All right, here's some ones that are not pizza, and some of them that aren't even food.
Okay.
So this is so dumb, but in Land Before Time,
The leaf.
there's the leaf also with the water drop on it, but also after Spike is born, he eats the grass from around and he eats it in clumps, and that like something about the sound of that, and then just like every time that makes me hungry. So that one was kind of funny. The imaginary dinner in Hook.
Oh,
Yes,
The
that's a
feast
solid
that
one.
they have with all the colorful like mooses and like that just looks really good. Anytime Pooh eats honey in the cartoon, like he'll take
like
his
the whole
paw,
show.
he'll take his paw and like scoop around the inside of the bowl, and then he'll pour it. I don't even like honey that much, but like yeah, that one does it for me. All right, I'll let you guys. I've got some more, but I'll let you guys go.
I know we're not supposed to like it, but the chocolate cake on Matilda, because it's like there's blood, sweat, and tears in this cake. And you're supposed to be grossed out, but you look at it, you're like, but that looks pretty
Well,
freaking
yeah.
good.
That was Lily's first answer. My oldest daughter. That's funny.
Oh man.
That would have been my wife's choice. If she would have jumped on, she would have said the cake from Matilda, because she talks about that all the time at the pizza shop.
Yes. All right. I expect a cookie in that vein. Like if the Matilda chocolate cake were a cookie, this would be the cookie.
Okay, I'm going to tell her that'll be the next one coming down the pike.
Like a
Let's see what she
triple
can do.
chocolate with like chocolate flakes on top and
That would be
tons of chocolate icing like to the edges.
We'll
All
see
right.
it soon.
Yes.
Do you guys have any more?
Oh,
I do.
got more.
I have a couple more.
Brent, do you have more? Anything coming to mind?
Nothing's coming to mind right now. No.
Okay. We're still talking about chocolate, and I'm gonna mention the way that Forrest Gump says chocolates. It's like this selfish, childish, indulgent, succulent way of saying the word chocolate that for whatever reason I can't eat. I love cheap chocolate. I love Hershey's milk chocolate. Like it doesn't get much better than that in my bland world, I guess. But
We're American. That's
but
fine.
I can't eat like a Hershey bar without Forrest Gump in my head going chocolate. And my like 5-year-old brain is just like chocolate. So anyway,
That's
Forrest
good.
Gump saying the word chocolate gets me.
I've got 2 chocolate ones. Scott Calvin finishing his sundae in Santa Claus.
That was my next one.
Yeah.
Because it like dings the bowl.
Yes.
Like the
Yeah.
when he's,
glass.
like,
The glass bowl, and then it's not good when Augustus does it in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but just seeing the chocolate river Like, I don't like how he like eats it. That grosses me out. But
there's nothing in that movie that makes me want to eat anything in that movie, which is really funny to me.
Yeah. It's all supposed to look so enticing, but I do want to look at Snosberry wallpaper.
I was literally going to say in Santa Claus at the end of the meeting, it's how he's scooping it out. Like the dinging on the glass with the metal. And it's like every bite is so precious to him that it must be good. This feels like a slightly higher level in that it's a serious movie and these characters really earned this food. And it's all the banquet food in Jurassic Park when the kids have gotten away. Yeah, when the kids have gotten away from the dinosaurs, and it's like it's such a serious movie, and like the Jell-O, and they're so excited because they've earned every bite of that food.
That's so funny.
And watching that as a kid, I'm like, I want to be there until the Raptors are, and then I do not want to be there.
Oh, that's so funny. I had that one.
So one funny one for me is that Narnia got me wanting to try Turkish delight for the very first time, because I'd never had it before until like watching the film. I did not read the books as a kid, and so I was at World Market and saw some and bought some, and then tried some and was immediately pissed off and felt lied to.
Yeah.
So,
and we'd be remiss if we mentioned Santa Claus and nobody mentioned Judy the Elf's hot chocolate. Like everyone wanted to try that. You couldn't even see it, but just like you've perfected 1,000-year-old recipe of hot chocolate. That has got to be the most flawless drink in all of history or fiction. So yes, the hot chocolate at the
Brent, we'll be interrupting each other about food this whole time. So if you come up with anything,
just jump right in.
No, the one that as I'm sitting here thinking about it, the Lady and the Tramp scene, the cartoon, obviously when they're eating the spaghetti.
Yeah.
I hate spaghetti, but that looks like spaghetti I would want to eat.
Totally.
Okay, speaking of early Disney cartoons, when Aladdin and Abu share the bread and Abu bites into his half of his loaf and there's a big bite mark and he like tries to keep it away from having to give it to the poor kids.
Dude, you got deep about these. Didn't you?
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of those.
Really, this is just Corey's like every morning, every day before lunch, and he's like, "How could we make a segment out of this for the podcast?"
Corey just has this random list in his head. And he's like, I'm gonna bring this up someday just so I can get this out.
I posed this same question to my family at dinner tonight. So Lily also said at the end of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, when the Grinch is slicing the meat. And like giving it out, the roast beast,
crazy looking roast beast.
Yeah, that's
found that appetizing. Hey, that's fun.
The sound of Bugs Bunny eating carrots.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't really like carrots all that much, but the sound of him eating them makes me hungry for something. And then my son, who's 8, said Cookie Monster, and I was like, "That's great."
Yeah.
All right.
What a great bunch of lists. Any more that we're missing?
Yeah. So I've got a couple more.
Sweet.
One of my favorite donut, my second favorite donut these days is a jelly donut, a powdered jelly filled donut. And as a kid, I hated them. Like I tried one, and I was like, "That's gross," and I didn't want one, and hadn't had one for years and years until a particular episode of Saved by the Bell that takes place in a shopping mall, and I think it was Fresh Prince. No, I think it was Saved by the Bell or Boy Meets World. I don't know now. Holy cow! In my head, it was automatically Saved by the Bell, and now I'm second guessing it. And because of that, nobody's going to understand the reference. I didn't expect you to anyway. But there's a situation where somebody goes up to a police officer who's sitting by himself in a food court at a table eating a jelly donut. And it was Saved by the Bell. And because it was Screech, he's like, "Is that a jelly donut?" And like in the middle of this emergency, and the cop was like, "Yeah, which means I'm on my break." Like that was the scene with the jelly donut in it. I watched that scene and immediately wanted a jelly donut for the first time in years and tried it again. And ever since then, I've loved jelly donuts.
I
That's
gotta, I gotta add to your donut one. I'm sorry, Dylan. Home Alone again. Larry Hankin plays Agent Balzac, and he's like, "You want us to go to your house and check on your son?" And he's got like the sound of the food is halfway swallowed, and it's got to be one of those like Cruller donuts too. I don't think it is, but it feels like the density of the and then it
a
falls
hunk of donut is like sitting on his
In the corner of his mouth.
in the corner of his mouth. But like that scene makes me want a donut every single time.
I was gonna say that next. That's so funny.
What about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? There was a I don't know if it was a cookie.
Oatmeal
or-
cream pie.
Yes. The gigantic oatmeal cream pie.
They were
Yes.
eating
Yes.
the icing out
Yeah.
of the middle of the oatmeal
Oh
cream
yeah.
pie.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Good
yeah.
one. Good one.
Oh,
Such a good one.
put me in front of a wall of oatmeal cream pie. I feel like
Right? So you
Gosh,
imagine
mate.
that oatmeal cream pies now are so small. It's so sad. I had it for the
Yeah.
first time last year because we were putting them in a cookie. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna house one of these. And it was like a quarter. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? They're so
Uh.
small.
So I got to get the giant and then eat two because that's just where we are now. It's really unfortunate.
Yes.
Yeah. The
There it
oatmeal-
is.
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's how
Love
big
it.
they should be.
Exactly.
Amen,
I
brother.
want to dive into the middle of it.
All right.
Okay, Kendall, keep going.
All right. So the last one that I've got is The Sopranos and just Italian sliced meats on bread. Like
Sure.
Oh,
I watched, which I've always been a fan of deli meats, and I've always appreciated Italian deli meats. And then after watching The Sopranos, like my consumption of Italian deli meats went up for sure. Particularly toward the end of the series, he asks for this like super simple gabagool sandwich. And like for a solid week, I was telling myself that that's going to be my favorite sandwich. And so I went out and I found out that gabagool, which is capicola, is not necessarily easy to find. Like I could not just walk into my Kroger and get a hold of some. They didn't have capicola there, which was interesting and frustrating.
Yeah.
I did that same thing. Like, did the Google search of phonetically spelling gabagool to try to find
Yeah.
to taste it
Try to
after
find out what
watching
it
that
is. And I,
series.
yeah,
Oh,
and I-
capicola.
yeah, gabagool, vinegar, peppers, provolone. Like that was the sandwich.
Yeah.
And so like I wanted to make that sandwich. I even looked up like what is he probably talking about with vinegar peppers and yeah.
Doesn't Jersey Mike's have that meat? Don't they have an
Capicola?
Italian that's got that?
They might. Subway apparently has it now too.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know about the quality. Again, I'm trying to eat what Tony Soprano ate, and I'm
Right.
sure it's probably not the same quality of capicola that Subway has. Like my guess is
There's
it's a
a-
couple notches.
There's a little Italian market in Columbus. I cannot remember the name of it. It starts with a C.
Carfagnas?
Carfagnas?
Maybe that's it. I used to go there whenever I was teaching myself to make pizza because they're the only place that had at the time I was using a 00 flour, and they're the only
Mm.
place around here I could find 00 flour. And I would feel pretty confident they would have it, but I don't know for sure. That's probably where I would check
Probably.
first.
Probably.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to head
Mortadella,
up there.
prosciutto. Yeah, we got to have some meats. Okay, well, that was a
Sounds
fun
like-
little game.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Great game. Thanks everyone for participating. Brent, you've got a new idea for a pizza with all the Italian meats and peppers. You can call it the Tony Soprano.
That would be a good
there's-
one.
There's another one for you. Expensive
Gabagool,
but delicious.
Vinegar, peppers, and provolone.
It would be awesome. Now I know you're not just a nurse, former nurse and pizza maker by day. You do also have other hobbies, I would imagine. And I happen to know that they align very nicely with Kendall and Corey. You're a bit of a hunter and fisherman, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I haven't been able to go as much as I used to go the past couple of years. That is the one downside of starting a business. The first few years, you have zero free time. But getting that back now. But yeah, I've always been very much into archery. I started when I was probably 5 or 6. My dad got me started into archery. I did a bunch of competitive stuff when I was younger, and then I just really got into, archery hunting. And now more so, we own 52 acres, and most of it's timber. And we were very fortunate. We bought it when everything was pretty cheap back in the day. But I like doing the timber work and the land management stuff probably more now than even hunting for the animals. I like manipulating the environment for them and seeing them do well in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. Have you tried bow fishing?
No. Well, whenever I was like in high school, we did, but not really. Like we didn't have the correct setup. We would just use recurves and stuff like that, but not. I always want. It looks like it'd be really fun, but I've never had the chance to do it with a legit setup.
I've got a new friend, outdoorsman as well, and he did some of that in Texas, and talked about how fun that is. I imagine the refraction, the water reflecting the angles, like when you're trying to shoot large fish from above the surface of the water, is a thing. But that seems like something I got to try at some point.
Yeah, that would be fun. I think if I remember, they're much lower than they look like in the water.
Yeah.
Is that a thing around here? Like, I feel like I don't see a whole lot of bow fishermen around here.
Not around here, I would imagine. And if it is, it's probably bass, I would imagine, or
carp.
Carp.
Yeah, people do that for carp. I've seen that, but I don't know around here where you would do that at. I'm not sure.
Go to those outdoor malls that have like a fountain and a bunch of carp and
koi ponds.
Start practicing.
Just start practicing there. Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave. This is not acceptable behavior.
No, I totally understand what you meant by land management, but for people that don't understand that are listening, that don't know exactly what that means, like I do. What does that mean? What do you mean by that when you say that?
So whenever land management or timber management is, taking a habitat that isn't substantial or isn't good to produce a quality wildlife, there's not food. Sometimes they call them like it's a desert underneath the canopy of trees because there's no food for the animals. So one thing I had to do, because most of our land was timber and it was a bunch of young maples, so it was just everything was shaded out. There was nothing growing on the forest floor. It was just leaves. It looked like a park. Was going in and cutting down a bunch of those trees. Or there's things you can do called a hinge cut, where you cut a tree partially and bend it down so it continues to grow. And it'll provide good cover for an animal to bed. And also, deer love to eat what they call woody browse, which is, the tips of trees, red maples. They really enjoy red maple. There's, greenbrier is pretty common around here. They love to eat that. So if you can put things that are out there to feed the animals and provide them cover, make them feel safe, you're going to end up getting more of those animals on your property and, a healthier herd from doing that kind of work.
That's how I would have described it. But I
thought so. Like you looked like you were going to say that to me, so I felt bad cutting you off there.
You probably used 3 or 4 less words, so I'm glad that I asked. That's awesome. What was that? What's that transition like? You said you now almost enjoy that more than hunting. Is it like, what are the things that you're seeing that make you enjoy, like that give you that? It's like the golfer who gets the 1 hole in one amidst all the bad shots. So like, do you have like cameras set up that you're watching the animals interact? Is it like certain things that you're seeing? You tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's one thing, part of it. So when I first moved here and we bought this property, it was pretty terrible to hunt on. There really wasn't much. I hunted very much that year. I ended up shooting a deer later in the season during gun season, but really I think it was just because my neighbors pushed it onto my property at that time. But seeing the numbers increase, so now my property went from looking like a park that deer really didn't use. We really didn't have any rabbits, didn't have anything on the property. Now, there's a lot of deer. There's actually a bunch of quail. We have tons and tons of rabbits. So just seeing all of those things increase. And then we've even changed like how our yard is, because we had a really big yard and we stopped mowing the very, very bottom part, which is pretty far from our house, in a part that's right behind the house, and let that start to grow back up. So we actually see tons of deer in the yard. Actually, the biggest deer that I've had on camera, I was going out to the car to go to the pizza shop, and I could have shot it in my yard with my bow. It was standing right at the. I got a video on my phone. I was just watching it. Like that kind of stuff is pretty cool to be able to see it that close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
tell you,
Corey
like,
can
I've-
set up in my driveway too, based on some of my recent webcam recordings. It's crazy how close some of those will get when they're comfortable. So you've clearly created that you've created the situation that you wanted. That's awesome.
Yeah. Here's my little PSA that I know I've said it before, but you can't find a better group of conservationists, of animal lovers, like people who respect wildlife than hunters and anglers. Like,
100%.
Those are the folks that actually care.
Yeah. My wife is not a hunter. She doesn't. I remember once we lived in Pennsylvania, I had shot a deer and it was cold out. So I had it in the garage. And I didn't tell her that. So she got up at like 5 a.m. to go to work and like turned the light on to that hanging in the garage, and she started crying. So, we've worked through those things as a couple, but, she even says that like she enjoys how like I talk about it. And, I have one really good friend who comes out here from Pennsylvania to hunt, and just, it's not always just going out there just to try to shoot something. That's not it. I love just seeing them thrive and do better. And unfortunately, you have to shoot them sometimes if you want to keep them healthy. As crazy backwards as that sounds, you can't have a million of them running around.
It's so true. Both of what you guys are saying, right? Like, I find that the stereotypical poacher, the guys that just take pot shots at animals, and those are far the exception, but the rule is very much, Kendall, what you're describing. And just being good stewards of the land as well. Like I've been following a YouTuber, his name's Kevin, and his channel is Modern Self-Reliance. Now I think he's just calling it Kevin Builds, and he doesn't hunt. But he has a ton of land in Canada, and he's just talking about like when large trees drop and then create a bunch of saplings around that larger tree, you actually have to thin out all those trees. And people who don't know say things like, "How dare you cut these trees down?" And he's like, "Well, if I want a healthier woods, I need to make it so that each tree gets an adequate shot at sunlight. And that can only happen if I'm regularly thinning it out. A lot of them are dead standing. So that becomes like a fire hazard and all these things." Like, people who actually know how to manage land and take care of it. And then on top of that, to make habitats that animals will enjoy so they can watch them. Some of my favorite days hunting or in a tree stand have been when I didn't see any deer and I'm watching turkeys, or I'm watching an owl swoop in, or I'm watching the squirrels play or whatever. That's just being in nature like that and just observing it and feeling like you're a part of it. Or what I always tell people, the best part is when you're in the woods and the woods doesn't know that you're there. Mm-hmm. And that's heaven on earth, man. It's so fun. So Brent, I'm with you on all of that.
What you said about the fire part of it, if people would do this more often and do prescribed burns and do things to their property to keep that young growth going, the risk of all those wildfires would drop. I'm not saying that it would be zero, because once one starts going, it doesn't matter if it's green anymore at that point. But, if a lot of the land that's not managed is just primed to catch on fire, and then there's no stopping it, as crazy as that sounds.
No, it's so true. But yeah, the archery thing is a whole other layer and a whole new love. So I'll spare you the whole story, but I was given a compound bow years back. I was the type of person that only went out during gun week and maybe go out for a day or two. And then I realized, in Ohio, archery season is like from September to February.
Yeah.
So rather than 5 days in a weekend, you got like a whole lot of hunting. And I didn't know how to shoot it at all. Shout out to the people who do run archery shops. I walked in and I said, "Hey, I know nothing." And he said, "Perfect." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "That means you don't have any bad habits to break. So I can teach you the correct form right now. How much time you got?" And I said, "I've got as much time as you do." So he sat with me. He got the bow like in working order, and then he took me to the range. And after maybe 30 to 45 minutes, I was doing tight groupings from 10, 20, and 30 yards. And it was like I literally had never even picked up a bow. And then to start with his expertise and him knowing how to help me, that first year I got a big dominant doe. And it's like it feels like the most sportsman-like thing that you can do to harvest an animal. Nothing against gun, and I'll still go out during gun week, but something about with this string and this stick, I have got a freezer full of food because I had to get within 20, 30 yards of this wild creature. So like learning how to pattern them and see where they move and try to put yourself in that, like that whole science and adventure and fun is so much more interesting to me than shooting a buck from 200 yards away with a super scoped in rifle.
Yeah, and that deer, when you're archery hunting, you're in the woods in a way that the animals don't know you're there.
Yeah.
You know, during gun season, those deer know people are in the woods. You know, a lot of times they're scared, which I feel that's where I start to feel bad for deer at that point in animals. Taking one with a bow, sometimes that deer doesn't even know that you're there, that it happened. It's just over. And it's it's so clean, it's so quiet, and it's, again, there's going to be people who will always disagree and who will always get mad that we do this, but it's by far the most humane way and ethical way to do it, I believe.
Yeah, it's so true. My last deer last season was a lung shot from like 10 yards from a 20-foot tree stand, and like that animal didn't suffer.
Right.
that he did not know what hit him. And yeah, I don't know. It feels so much more responsible, and anyway, I could wax poetic about hunting for another hour, and I don't think our listeners who came for pizza want to.
Yeah, well, that's the tie-in right there. So we've given him a chocolate cake cookie that his wife needs to make. We've given him the gabagool pizza, and now a venison pizza. So
love it.
That would be I don't know how that would go over.
Yeah. I'll try the samples that you build as you're working on that. Just let me know.
That sounds more like a farm fired pizza, not a
pizza
right nerd pizza.
Yeah, I agree with
that's what farm fired means. Yeah, we're gonna do some goose eggs on this pizza. Let's go. Brent, it has been so much fun having you on today. Now, for anyone listening, some listeners, a lot of our listeners are in Ohio, not everyone. So what's the best way for people to find you, maybe online? What's the best way for people who might be driving across Ohio or around Columbus, greater Columbus area? Where should they find you in person that you want them to find you in person? And where should they find you online so that they can at least follow your delicious creations before they're in Ohio?
So social media is king for us. Instagram is my favorite form of social media. Everything we post does go to Facebook, but I don't spend a ton of time on Facebook. But yeah, if you just go look up Pizza Nerds OH, because unbeknownst to me, there is a Pizza Nerds that exists. It's in Canada. Didn't know that. So they're up there doing their pizza nerdy thing in Canada. We're not affiliated at all. Didn't even know they were a thing until we started getting reviews for them on our Facebook page. Oh. But anyway, Pizza Nerds OH on Instagram and Facebook is the place to find what we're doing when we're doing it. And if you're around the Newark, Granville area, just Google Pizza Nerds and it'll take you right to us. The address is 2050 Cherry Valley Road, but that's probably arbitrary if you're listening right now on a podcast. So just use the Google.
Yeah. Yes, or anyone that might be traveling east or west on 16 or 70.
Yeah, we're probably only a little over half a mile off of 16.
Yeah, and maybe 10 minutes from 70. Yeah. So much easier for those folks that might be headed in or out of Columbus on 161/16 or 70. Look it up before you drive by, and then you can order it on your way. You guys are always super fast. People can order it and then eat it on their way home. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. Make sure to go follow them on social media. And if you happen to be nearby, they're worth the drive and load up on all the pizzas and cookies that you can handle. Thanks so much for joining, man. This was a ton of fun. We always love talking about food, and I'll make sure to get those stickers over to the shop ASAP.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And yes, I'm looking forward to the stickers. Bring as many as you want. We have plenty of places to put them.
Yeah.
On
Sounds
it.
good. And thanks everybody for listening. See you. Bye.
Bye.